White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf has changed his tune on how long it'll take to turn things around. Let's discuss the statement he put out about this historically awful season next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to hit that like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, Jerry Reinsdorf issued a statement acknowledging this year is frustrating, but he said things will not get better overnight. So let's dive into a statement that might make you go from frustrated to flabbergasted. Then the White Sox were swept by the Guardians and are 7 games from setting the new all-time high for defeats in a season, as it is now a matter of when that I want to discuss, not if, that they'll break the record in the second segment. And finally, haven't done a way back Wednesday the past 2 weeks, so let's do a throwback Thursday and go over the greatness of the 1994 team. And this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Well, it was a year ago when Jerry Reinsdorf said he owed it to the White Sox fans to turn things around quickly. Well, after he promoted Chris Getz to GM, the team got worse, historically worse. The owner has finally issued a statement on how bad things have gotten, and I'll read it in a moment, but there are a few takeaways I want to highlight right away. One, there's no mention of him taking accountability for how bad things have gotten. I mean, even Steve Cohen took some responsibility for the New York Mets falling short of the playoffs last year after he spent a fortune trying to help them get there. On the flip side, Jerry barely spent anything on this team to get things turned around quickly, and now it is on the doorstep of not only breaking the 1962 New York Mets record, but also the 1916 Philadelphia A's for the worst winning percentage of all time, which I'll get to in the second segment. Second, I feel his comments reinforce how he wasted a golden opportunity to reset the franchise and bring in a qualified GM who is capable of pulling off a rebuild of this magnitude. I mean, this rebuild is going to be huge, massive. I mean, you basically have to build almost an entire new house. I mean, if you were looking at this as terms of what type of structure's been left that Kenny and Rick left Chris Getz, it's rubble. It's not ripped down. You know, Chris Getz isn't ripping this down to the studs. He's cleaning out the rubble right now. And I don't think he's cleaning it very well. And this was a chance to bring in somebody like Kim Ng or James Glick. And he just didn't. He didn't even take an interview. Instead, he went lazy and selfish by not interviewing anyone, not interviewing any outside candidates, and just promoting an unqualified Chris Getz. And even worse, he brought Tony La Russa back into the organization. And suddenly, you have a shadow GM. Third, I'm not sure he's grasping how bad the franchise has decayed and the role he has played in it. And fourth, now is not the time to compliment the team for the effort when they are losing this much. All right, so here's Jerry's statement. Quote, everyone in this organization is extremely unhappy with the results of this season. That goes without saying. This year has been very painful for all, especially our fans. We did not arrive here overnight, and solutions won't happen overnight either. Going back to last year, we have made difficult decisions and changes to begin building a foundation for future success. What has impressed me is how our players and staff have continued to work and bring a professional attitude to the ballpark each day, despite a historically difficult season. No one is happy with the results, but I commend the continued effort. I expect to have more to say at the end of the season. All right, first, the best reaction to the statement that I have seen so far is from former host of Locked On White Sox and current host of the CHGO White Sox podcast, Herb Lawrence. And he tweeted this out at EcknerWall23. All Reinsdorf is going to say at the end of the year is that he's disappointed, but still has faith in Chris Getz, and he's doing a good job despite mounting evidence of the opposite. There'll be minor staff changes. There'll be no money spent, and he'll insult fans. Yay! That's why things could be just as bad next year as it is this year. You have a GM that has so far proven he is incapable of pulling off a rebuild of this magnitude. I mean, I had WBBM's Rob Hart on yesterday's show, and he pointed out it should be nearly impossible to be this bad in this day and age with all the resources a team should have to construct a roster of professional players that should at least be able to win 33 games by, say, June, not September 12th, which the Sox are stuck on right now. And it is a struggle, too, for the Sox to get there. They've won 6 games, if I recall correctly, since the All-Star break. They won 7 games in July and August. 7. I mean, that just goes to show you how incompetent the entire front office is. That you can't put together a roster to win more than 7 games in the dog days of summer. And while injuries and poor free agent destination reputation handed down from the prior leadership group is made it a certainty that this year would be awful, it still should not be awful enough to where you are in the same sentence as the 1916 Philadelphia A's. I mean, think about it. The 1916 Philadelphia A's have been invoked now. That was the team with the worst winning percentage in the modern era, and they're being brought up. Now, the silver lining is 114 losses must have finally gotten to Jerry to see the light and realize you can't just turn things around quickly with an unproven GM and an unwillingness to spend the large sums of money it takes for a quick turnaround. At least he finally saw the light that, whoa, I can't turn things around quickly if I've got this guy that only I thought was qualified to be a general manager, and I can't turn things around quickly if I'm not willing to give out $100 million or more contract to players, and I'm not willing to spend my way to turn things around quickly. This acknowledgement of how things will not get better overnight makes him look worse than what he did at the time last year. I mean, he told us he owed it to us as the fans to turn things around quickly. I would rather have him said, look, I'm lazy, I'm selfish, and I really don't feel like even taking 10 minutes to talk with former Astros GM James Click. I would have actually rather have seen that. Or even say, I don't want to follow the rumor of me trying to hire Dayton Moore to tutor Getz. Just don't want to do it. I would honestly rather him say, Chris told me he could do a better job than Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams, and I like what he had to say. BS everyone about quick turnarounds, when the truth was, in last year's press conference, he admitted he's not sure how much time he has left on this world, on this earth, and he does not want to be patient for a long rebuild that was needed. I mean, he basically admitted, I plan on being around here for 10 more years, even though I don't know how, think about how sometimes arrogant rich people can be. To think, well, I'm going to be around here 10 more years. You sure about that? We're not guaranteed today. Nobody is. But apparently when you have billions of dollars, you can say, God, let me live another 10 years. Now, Getz did have to balance being patient with prospects, development versus rushing them in the big leagues. But this let's be competitive mantra was doomed from the start, and it cost precious development time for players who were ready for big league opportunities. I mean, think about that now. They've set back Dominic Fletcher by a few months. It took Corey Lee how many months to become the starting catcher? Because we had to have Martin Maldonado and his ability to handle a pitching staff out there. Jonathan Cannon lost precious developmental big league innings. And then to say he thinks Getz has laid the foundation for future success, when all he's done, folks, is he's brought in Brian Bannister, and Brian Bannister's brilliant thinking when it comes to pitching. That, to me, is all he's done. And Josh Barfield, I am encouraged that he brought in Josh Barfield. Hopefully I got the name right, from the Arizona Diamondbacks organization, as they do have a track record of developing players. But otherwise, there's no foundation in the lineup. Maybe in the rotation, but not the lineup. Luis Robert Jr. is not a superstar right now. He's regressed tremendously. Colson Montgomery is supposed to be your next superstar, and he's looking more and more every day like his ceiling is just maybe an everyday shortstop whose career season will be like a 1.5 F4. He's reminding me a lot of Paul DeYoung, which, hey, nice career, but he's supposed to be a superstar. Brian Ramos, Edgar Caro, they have the ability to be superstars, and George Wolcott can be a stud. However, Wolcott's 18. Caro is battling back problems, not good for a catcher. And the team is having Ramos take fly balls because this front office is convinced Miguel Vargas can play third base. And this team does not have a permanent manager either and will likely be outbid for its favorite, target Skip Schumacher, and be told no thanks from Terry Francona. So stop with the foundation unless you're talking about the rotation. And stop commending the efforts of the players. First, they are major league professionals. Well, some are. The minimal expectation is give effort. That should be the minimal expectation. And now, while we saw in 2023 and 2022, the team kind of dog it, that was a few bad apples. Most professional athletes, most Major League Baseball players will give effort. And the effort to battle back is not enough to win. Okay? And I'm going to discuss that in the next segment. So great. They're trying, but this team still blows leads, still plays costly defense, and still makes bad base running mistakes. And still lacks players that cannot provide value. They can provide effort. Yay. You want value. Well, anyways, the Sox were swept by the Cleveland Guardians. Let's discuss how it is now a matter of when, not if, the Sox break not only the 1962 New York Mets record for the most defeats in a 162-game season, but also the 1916 Philadelphia A's modern era record for the lowest winning percentage. Let's talk about that next on Locked On White Sox. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you one win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. Hey, 3 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. And PrizePicks is the best way to get in on action on sports in most states, including Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. And I've told you about my buddy who lives behind the Cheddar Curtain. He uses PrizePicks to get his picks in and loves it because of how easy it is to play. DJ Moore's more or less at receiving yards is 57.5, so maybe that pick is a good one to pair up with the Caleb Williams deal. And download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Now, if you're more of a props or parlay type of person, then FanDuel is the sports book for you. You've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, FanDuel has something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all Sunday, 9:15 pregame moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be live starting today. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. And if you're done playing the White Sox, the Bears are still plus 220 on the money line for Sunday night's game. So imagine if the Bears find a way to win in Houston and you put $10 on that, you get double your money with that profit boost. So just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sports book. Hey, thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox are off today, and then they start a 3-game set with the Oakland A's on Friday. The first pitch is at 6:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Make sure to hit that like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts, as Locked On White Sox is available on places such as Apple and Spotify. And I would like to think that I'm an excellent audio companion when you're mowing the lawn or sitting in traffic. So, hey, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts. All right. I love how former host of the show, Nick Morawski, he tweeted out regarding the Sox being on a collision course with breaking the 1962 New York Mets record for the most losses in a 162-game season. I love what he tweeted out here. At Nick_GGTB. 6 more losses to tie the record, 7 to own it with 15 games left. Not if, ... but when. What a time to be alive with these cards that have been dealt. Mercy. #White Sox. Yeah, that's right, folks. 121 defeats is now not a moment of if, but when, after the club was swept by the Guardians and they have lost 15 straight home games. And remember when we could brag that, hey, the White Sox beat the Guardians. You know, they got 5 wins against the Guardians. If they get 2 wins, they'll have won the season series against the AL Central leading Cleveland Guardians. And no, that ain't happening, folks. And Chicago Sun-Times beat reporter Daryl Van Schouwen's write-up on the Sox 6-4 defeat yesterday was just excellent how it started out. And I want to just share a few excerpts here of how the club got to 114 losses on the year. If you've seen the White Sox lose 114 times this season, you've seen them lose in every way imaginable. In their 6-4 loss Wednesday to the Guardians that completed a 3-game sweep and put them 6 losses away from tying the 1962 Mets modern era record of 120 in a season, the Sox twice saw the Guardians score 2 runs on infield singles by the same player. Lane Thomas beat out a slow roller to third base. Miguel Vargas with 2 outs in the first inning, allowing Stephen Kwan to score easily from third and Jose Ramirez to race all the way in from second. When Thomas beat second baseman Lenyn Sosa's throw to first for an infield single after Sosa's diving stop with 2 outs in third, Kwan and a hustling Adrian Gimenez scored. Quote, yeah, those were tough, said first baseman Andrew Vaughn, who threw home to try to get Gimenez. Got to go ball first. I'm stretching, trying to make sure it's an out, and I can't tell. And they are already wheeled around. Jose can run tough plays. Adding to the what's next, that's end quote. And then adding to what's next element of the afternoon and season, Gimenez was on base because Vaughn was late getting to the bag after picking up his tapper in the infield grass. But hey, effort, folks. They're giving effort. Yeah. You know, they're trying hard. I think everyone would prefer if they just tried better, or if they were just better in general, or hey, win. Try hard. That's the new sales. I mean, that's the one thing too that drives me nuts. Like, you know, it was Len Casper and Steve Stone on the call, so thankfully you could actually listen to it. But the one thing where I'm like, come on, can we stop with the? Well, they're trying. They're not giving up. They're not dying. They're still losing, and they're losing badly in terms of how much they're stacking up. And again, the magic number to join the 62 Mets is 6, and to break it is 7. And I think what is being overlooked here, you know, that's just not being mentioned enough, is the 1916 Philadelphia A's, who have the modern record for the worst winning percentage at .235, is still in play. The Sox could also break that record. And also the A's, they played 153 games. You know, you're talking about a record set when America did not even join World War I yet. And here's the irony. The club that reached rock bottom, you know, in 1916, it happened 3 years after winning a World Series. Well, sounds a little bit familiar. And how did they get there? John Wortham wrote this in the 2016 Sports Illustrated. All right, so starting in the fall of 14, player after player walked into Connie Mack's office and sat in on his desk. As forthright and honorable as ever, Mack looked each man in the eye and explained that he had been traded, sold, or released. Mack trafficked in the let 'em down easy talk that will ring familiar to sports fans a century later. In order for the franchise to move forward, it's time to embrace a youth movement. It would be fiscally irresponsible for us to match your competing offers. It isn't personal, it's just business. Mack offered a familiar trope to the media and the A's fans too, reassuring them that the team was building for the future, that any short-term pain would be long-term benefit for the franchise. In truth, though, it was a fire sale. the gutting of a successful roster that would prefigure, say, Jeffrey Lora's dismantling of the Marlins after they won the 2003 World Series. Mack has often been depicted as a skinflint, and that was a vivid illustration of his tight-fisted ways. In the early 1910s, the A's boasted the 100,000 infield of Frank Baker, Jake Berry, Eddie Collins, and Stuffy McInnes. By midseason in 15, after Berry and Collins had been sold off to the Red Sox and the White Sox, respectively, the running joke was Mack now had a $10 infield. Some observers were more charitable, asserting that Mack was simply acting as a prudent businessman. Before television contracts and licensing deals and luxury suites, baseball relied mostly on attendance for revenue. Anyone venturing to North Philadelphia and scouring the modestly populated stands at Shipp Park could see that if the A's were to stay solvent, they could not pay players handsomely. Wow, that sounds very familiar. 1, modestly filled stands. Instead of North Philadelphia, you're talking about the south side of Chicago, which still gets a terrible stereotype. Undeservedly so. Trust me, yes, you had that one incident last year, but there's so much security there that you should feel safe. And again, if you're just wearing your White Sox gear, just saying, you'll be fine. And an owner not willing to spend money to win? Although the difference between Mack and Reinsdorf was Jerry was willing to spend, but not enough. And the money that was spent was poorly resourced that led to this decay. And the Sox only won a division title 3 years ago, not a World Series. But I mean, the Sox are still 3 wins behind what the Philadelphia A's finished with. And a record that was set when the Sox franchise was 16 years old. And the A's were still in Philadelphia. I mean, think about it. The A's are about to play in their 4th city next season while waiting to play in their 5th city permanently. And not only is it said that the Sox could tie the 62 Mets by next week if this 3-game losing streak balloons into 9 games, but they could break it as soon as next Friday at San Diego. Now, they'll avoid having to face Dylan Cease, but still, the small market club that spent money, that went big and did all the things the Sox should have done, that actually outbid the Sox for Manny Machado. All the things the Sox should have done during their contention window will have a shot to send the Sox into baseball infamy. Now, the Sox have Oakland this weekend and the Angels for 3 on the road after, so there's a chance they can prolong the inevitable. But you can't say with those 2 teams, especially those 2 bad teams, that the Sox are certain to win those series. This team not only depleted its already thin talent at the trade deadline, but no one is playing well since the All-Star break. And that's another thing that's amazing about this losing streak. Like, everybody's playing bad. Garrett Crochet has rarely looked crisp as something, it's the innings load that has finally caught up with him. I think it's more just he's been reduced to being an opener. Davis Martin and Jonathan Cannon, they've been good on the mound, but they can still be prone to a big inning, like with what happened to Martin yesterday, and also the defense just being absolutely atrocious sometimes. And as I said, Luis Robert Jr., totally atrocious at the plate. And I love how Herb Lawrence made this point on the CHGO podcast 2 days ago. Superstar players, they're not usually on historically awful teams because they can raise the team's play. And LRJ, he's helped sink it. All right, well, let's talk about some better times like 1994 when the Sox were one of the best teams in baseball. And since I talked about Jerry Reinsdorf already making terrible statements, then the sad thing about the 1994 team is you have to talk about how he helped ruin any chance that the team had to win the World Series. Next on Locked On White Sox. When life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. With Tonal, you can get an efficient workout. You can get efficient workouts personalized just for you and are available with the amount of time you have. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger, powered by AI. Tonal learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Tonal learns from your movement and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move. With detailed progress reports, they even create personalized program and a workout suggestions or recommendations based on your individual goals. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. And unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. From professional athletes to the mom of 3, Tonal is trusted by thousands who have become their strongest. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com. So TONAL.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. Again, the White Sox are off today and then start a 3-game set with the Oakland A's on Friday. The first pitch is at 6:40 p.m. Central Standard Time tomorrow. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with the SiriusXM on the XM app, the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back into Lockdown White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all my everydayers. Hope you enjoyed Rob Hart's interview. I know there's a lot of you that are like, I'm going to vote no. I will not want the White Sox, the taxpayers to pay for a new stadium. Okay, first of all, it's not up for a public referendum. Secondly, I'm in full agreement with you. Jerry should pay for the entire stadium himself. But, there might have to be some infrastructure costs that, taxpayers may have to pick up for that new stadium on the 78. And a lot of, public usually ends up on that. Again, I'm not a taxpayer of the state of Illinois anymore. My parents are, and I have and my sisters are. But if it was say like, hey, we need some public roads and we need the sewer water, you might have to consider that because of what they are proposing. But yes, if it's, hey, pay for everything and I'll just give you 200 million, that's a bad deal. And I do think the taxpayers and the governor and the state representatives should keep fighting Jerry Reinsdorf to say, you got to pony up way more than $200 million. All right. I'll always die on this hill that the Sox would have won the 1994 World Series had the strike not wiped it out. And I don't care that the Yankees had 70 wins. I don't care that the Expos had 74. The Sox were stacked, and they were coming off winning the 1993 AL West. And if Game 5 goes a little bit differently in 1993, we could be talking about potentially winning back-to-back. Now, you could argue the up-and-coming Cleveland team, who was a game back, might have caught the Sox in the standings. But remember, the wild card had just been introduced, so the Sox were going to make the playoffs no matter what because the AL West was stinky awful. But they were just stacked, and it felt like destiny was on their side. It felt like this was going to end that drought that you had to go back to 1917. The Yankees had the lineup, but their pitching staff was held together by duct tape and chewing gum. The AL West, again, was a joke. I think Texas was like 10 games under 500, and Cleveland was just starting to emerge. The Sox, though, had Frank Thomas hitting .353 with a 1.217 OPS, a 1.217 OPS. Think about that. I mean, that's just unfathomable. Imagine. Not only do the Sox need like guys like Frank Thomas, but they also think about it. They got a career year from Darren Jackson. Yes, DJ did have a 312 average that season and 104 games too. And Julio Franco, he revived his career with a 319 average. Then then they had those solid players in Robin Ventura, Joey Cora, Ozzie Guillen, Lance Johnson. And you had the starting rotation of Blackjack McDowell, Alex Fernandez, Wilson Alvarez, and Jason Beret. That would have pitched them to the World Series. And I would like to believe McDowell and Fernandez would have acquitted themselves for their 1993 postseason struggles. And those four, along with Thomas, would have won the World Series. But then everything stopped on August 12th. That is when the players went on strike. As owners led by, Commissioner Bud Selig and Jerry Reinsdorf, they wanted to put in place a salary cap and the right to match any offers for free agents. So basically what they wanted was they wanted to basically totally suppress salaries. And the strike ended up dragging on toward the cancellation of the World Series. So think about that. Jerry thought about economics. He thought that was more important. A salary cap was more important. The right to basically have restricted free agency was more important than winning the World Series. So again, when people say Jerry wants to win, he wants to win on his terms, and his terms is on the cheap. And that may have worked back in the day, but then guess what happens when you go on the cheap? Look at what happened to the Philadelphia Athletics. I can't believe I'm citing the Philadelphia Athletics. Think about that. But you would love to think, had Jerry not pushed so hard and not, tried to be so hawkish and get the other owners to be so hawkish, that a truce could have been reached like it was in 1981 and baseball could resume. And then the playoffs would happen and the Sox would cruise to the World Series. Instead, you and I had to wait 11 more years when another great rotation and another great hitting first baseman. And yes, Frank Thomas was there. He had that stretch to keep the 2005 dominant season alive before he went on the injured list. But again, that great rotation and another great hitting first baseman that led the Sox to the promised land. We had to wait 11 more years in a land you and I will probably never see again as long as Jerry owns the team. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back tomorrow. I'll finally have Besnik Zachary. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I asked him for the pronunciation from On Tap Sportsnet, as him and I will tackle how pretty much every player is struggling since the All-Star break. And I want to provide you with as many takes as I can on who the next manager should be. So he'll join me to discuss that. Feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding owner Jerry Reinsdorf's recent statement, how it is not a matter of when, how is now a matter of when and not if the club will break the 1962 New York Mets record for the most losses in a 162 game season, but also that they might break the 1916 Philadelphia A's record for the worst winning percentage in the modern era, and showing appreciation for the 1994 White Sox. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.